Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to this morning's meeting of the Tacoma Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. Hopefully everyone received an agenda. We have a very packed agenda again today. We're going to do something a little bit different to kind of open up our meeting this week. Last week we postponed doing small breakout groups for a discussion about the sustainability of the coalition. So this week we didn't want to miss that again. So we want to do that first thing. So to kick us off this morning, I want to invite Garrett to join us and kind of share his thoughts behind a document that he created about formalizing the coalition to end homelessness. The document was emailed out to everyone by Maureen over a week ago. And here Garrett's sharing the document. So take it away, Garrett.
Great, thanks so much. Fun to be here again, guys. So as I think about how to help our coalition be more effective in serving our community, one challenge kept getting, a whole bunch of challenges kept getting wrapped together, and I kept wondering if there was a way to build a structure in our community that can meet a lot of these challenges. And I am not in love with this. I like it, but I would love for all of our brains to come up with whether this is a good idea or needs to be structured in a different way. I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes so I don't spend too much time. I've put up on the screen my proposed organizational structure. And this organizational structure has a number of objectives. One objective is to provide the administrative support so that this meeting can keep going in an effective and efficient way. And as Rob and all the rest of the crew is sort of working all of the tasks, it's a lot to keep this meeting going every week. And so if you had administrative support to do it, like a lot of organizations that do this, that would be great. So none of the goals of this proposal have to do with changing how this meeting works. They have to do with how do we support this group, but also how do we support some of the things that I don't think are happening adequately in Pierce County. So another challenge we've had a lot is how do we as community members advocate for policy changes and laws and funding and ordinances to support, right, our folks living homeless. And that's something we've always struggled with. Had we have our coalition, which is a super big tent, we want everybody to be here no matter your political persuasion or your perspective of zoning laws in Washington or Pierce County or Tacoma. And so trying to make this group not get stuck in advocacy, but to be the collaborative body. So another goal was to create a way for people to advocate that doesn't interfere with the work we do in this Friday provider meeting. A third goal that I had was to figure out how we can involve people experiencing homelessness or recently experiencing homelessness in a much more active way in how we design our homeless programs. And I know that our homeless programs do work hard to collect client voice. Like that's a big part of how clients determine their solution to homelessness. But we often struggle kind of on a system perspective to get that voice in front of policymakers and other ways. And what a lot of communities do is something called a speakers bureau, right? But somewhat formal structure, compensated for the people doing it, basically a pool of resources we can draw on when we need to bring some personal stories or to get some closer perspective. And another group that's really important that's not well supported, so another goal is to figure out a way to support some other community groups that are doing vital work. And one of those is the Tacoma Tenant Organizing Committee. They had some funding some time ago, right, just after the whole Tiki Hut fiasco. And that group was really effective when it had administrative support. When it lost that administrative support, it's not been able to be as effective. And so another goal of my proposed structure is to provide the infrastructure for them to do their work. So not to take over their work in any way, but to make their work possible by taking the administrative tasks and putting them in a professional environment so they can get busy with their advocacy. And a fifth goal is around how we as a community fill the void that is left by there being no group coordinating all of Pierce County's homeless activities. And there are a lot of groups that sort of think that they do that, but I don't think that they fully do. So that would be the continuum of care and the county and the city. They all have some role in coordinating our homeless response, but they don't own the homeless space. They don't take accountability for having adequate resources for our community. And so another objective is to kind of create a structure that could become that. Whether it does or not, I don't know. So I created this inverted, I'm like totally waving my hands around, you probably can't even see me. I created this inverted organizational structure. And the reason isn't because it makes the world dramatically different, but the point is that I'm proposing paid staff to support the important work, which isn't, the executive director is not at the top. They're not the important thing. The important thing is the work of the provider meeting. It's the work of a proposed advocacy committee. It's the work of the speakers bureau. It's the work of tenant organizers. And it's the work of implementing at a minimum, like us supporting the subcommittees on the continuum of care with staffing to help them complete their tasks. Right? Or even helping support the continuum of care, right? A lot of communities, the continuum of care is not part of one of the government organizations. It's a separate group, right? So that's something we could think about, right? Again, I don't have to do it that way. It's not like a deal breaker. It's not even that important, but it's maybe an opportunity for us to do better. To support the work of all those groups, I'm recommending 3 different positions get funded. And in order to house that funding, I'm recommending that we create a new entity in order to do that. I would be fine if some other entity wanted to pick that work up, right, and bring those staff positions in. But I'm kind of thinking like $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year organization with 3 big jobs. One of them is an executive director. And they keep everything going. They maintain relationships with all the other big bodies, with the governments, with the continuum of care, with the funders in the community, with other nonprofits. Another, right, so that's a role, right? Full-time or not, I don't really know. Another role is a policy analyst, right? Somebody that, well, does what Maureen does, right? That helps the coalition understand best practices and understand opportunities for funding and understand the way the world is shifting so that, and understand something, you know, complicated like zoning laws and how we might push for zoning law changes to eliminate homelessness, right? That's one of our tools, right? But somebody needs to understand the details, and that would be an analyst. And the third role that we need, maybe the most important, is an administrative coordinator. And that's somebody that posts meeting minutes, that makes sure its speakers know how to come to the meeting and do those tasks, like all of the administrative things that are necessary in order for all of these different groups to be able to focus on how do we make change instead of how do I make sure that everybody knows that the Zoom meeting starts at 9 a.m. and how to log in, right? So administrative person that makes all of that happen. So that's my sell. And the big question I have is it worth it in our community to spend big money, not crazy money, but real money on work that doesn't serve people experiencing homelessness? That, right? In other words, like this is an infrastructure thing so that we can do a better job as a community. Is it worth it? And that's a really interesting question. Like, is it worth it? I don't think we can divert money from the county and the city to do this kind of work. I think this would have to be some private money, right? That believes that by supporting these groups, we can serve our constituents better, serve our community members better than if we didn't. And that's the discussion, right? So creating an advocacy group, right? Keeping this provider group supported, supporting the speakers bureau, Tacoma tenants, maybe the continuum of care. I don't really know. That's a whole different world. But certainly supporting some of their subcommittees, right? Helping those subcommittees be successful. And is that worth the cost? That's the question. Back to you, Rob.
All right, thanks for setting that up, Garrett. So what we wanted to do this morning is to consider those questions that Garrett just posed in small groups. So it looks like we have roughly 40 people in the room right now. What I'm going to do is split us up into, let's say, 8 different groups, and we can spend 10 minutes in our groups, and everyone will be randomly assigned 10 minutes in our groups to kind of hear everyone's voice around the idea, both of what Garrett proposed and in general about sustainability of the efforts of the coalition. One person in each group, my ask would be is that you take some notes and we will report out after we do our 10 minutes of discussion. Everyone, I think almost all of us are back in the room now. So why don't we break right into report outs, and we had 8 rooms. Hopefully everyone has a few comments from each room. Let's try to we want to be able to wrap up this part of the session in about 10 to 15 additional minutes. So with that in mind, why don't we start with room 1? What were the high points or main points of your conversation?
I don't remember what room I am. Garrett, do you remember what room?
Mike Yoder's room 1.
Okay.
Mr. Yoder needs to unmute himself.
Thank you. That's a good reminder for those of us who run Zoom meetings. When we go into breakout rooms, tell everybody to take note of their room number. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I'm room 1. So super quickly, we had Dana from CCS who's been involved with this coalition for 14 years. And she basically really believes that, it's undergone an evolution that's been very helpful. It's in its recent expansion, of what it's been doing and the frequency of its meetings. She sees it gaining in power. She wonders where the funding will come from. Stephen from Pioneer Human Services has been involved about a year. He really likes this loose association that this has provided, and isn't so sure, what would be gained by having more of a structure. We had an interesting input from Rebecca, who joined us from LIHI up in Seattle. I think she's going to be presenting about the tiny house village later. So she was just in our room, and she's the very first time meeting with our coalition, but she's actually very familiar with the Seattle Homeless Coalition. And she says they have a formalized structure, a staff of 5 people with an executive director, an admin, an advocacy coordinator, a member coordinator, and they are a force to be reckoned with up in Seattle. They have become a very respected entity by both the city council and the county council up there. And so I think it gave us a little vision of what we might be able to achieve by formalizing what we do down here. A question brought up by several people, Jeff Rogers and Dana also, are about just how the COC integration would work, what that relationship would be like. Everybody, I think, recognizes that figuring that out is going to be an essential question to answer. And Sarah, who joined us just at the end there from Lena, just wonders if the members who've been so involved, us as just voluntary members in our loose forum here, if we'll lose some of the energy that we have of collaboration and working together once we have paid staff members, will we just kind of defer to them to do the work? And I shared my experiences with 2 coalitions I'm involved with now, the Human Services Coalition, which used to be a force to be reckoned with in Pierce County, 20 years ago, and has really lost most of its power and is trying to find it again, but with no formal staff. Is a ragtag band of voluntary members, and it's very hard for it to find a voice and to find power, as opposed to the Affordable Housing Consortium, of which I'm on the board. And it has a new executive director in the last 2 years and new energy. It has some resources. It has a paid full-time executive director and involved board. And I think they're on the upswing in their power and their influence because of that investment in their formal structure as a coalition. So as I was saying, I think you kind of get what you invest in. So that was the comments we had.
Great, thank you, Michael. I was taking notes for group 2, so I'll report out quickly on that. There were many similar themes from what Michael reported from group 1. The general consensus seemed to be that a more formalized group would be good for the organization, for the coalition and its sustainability. There was concern about funding and where would funding come from in order to have any paid staff. That seemed to be a pretty common with the folks who were in our room. And also just a general concern about the sustainability of the coalition as it exists now, with some discussion of a reminder of how this coalition expanded and became a more kind of essential weekly gathering after the city created the emergency around shelter and homelessness. In general, there was support for the idea of having a 501c3 and filing that paperwork. And then Jan Rumbeck was sharing how important the coalition has been over the years for public health and the ability to coordinate and do outreach around public health issues that impact this population. So in general, that's where we were at with group 2. Group 3, who can report out from that group?
Is that us?
I'm sitting shaking heads, so.
Megan, were we in group 3?
Yeah, we were. It's you.
Okay, I kind of thought so. So in group 3, we had a number of ideas. I'm going to give Oscar's first because he's only been with this coalition for 6 months since he started working at Nativity House. And he had a lot of wisdom, though. It's about whatever we do, make sure that we don't set ourselves up for burnout. And that is kind of what I think this framework was created for, was to avoid the burnout or the dissipation of the energy. And so our group had 2 people who have been strongly opposed to any sort of 501c3 in the past, and both of us have moved over. I'm going to let Al talk about what he has to say, but I want to say that, okay, also Megan talked about the importance of getting funding elsewhere, not in the city and county, that was something she liked about what Garrett was presenting, that it be not, that the group never be obligated to the city or county in what our recommendations are, or any government entity. I had a problem with the top bar of the organizational structure. What I propose is that instead of organizations, which makes it look as if we have some control over those organizations, no matter which direction you put the chart, that they be issues, that we say we're going to support these community issues, and then give a list of the organizations we already know are working on those issues, instead of putting the organizations themselves there, because visually it has that, people have a tendency to see it as a top-down, no matter which way you put the chart. And then take it away, Al.
Oh, I have mixed feelings about the whole thing, but I basically see the value in evolving toward some kind of a formal organization. Most of my mixed feelings are very practical, and like the funding has already been mentioned by several. The negotiation of what we're going to do compared to what the county and the city are going to do will have to be done very carefully and probably very politically, because I suspect we're going to get a fair amount of opposition from at least one of those government entities. I forgot some of the stuff I said in the group already because I'm getting older. I hope that we're able to find some ways to be supportive of organizations without controlling them or appearing to control them. And I think ultimately the county and the city will have to formally delegate some kind of recognition to the group to take this on. And that may have to be done at council levels in both both county and city.
Thank you, Al. So group 4, do you have somebody to report out, or do you remember who was in group 4?
Hi, Jenny. I'm going to report out for group 4. So we discussed a number of things that's already been reported out, funding and where that's going to come from. One, some of the positives, organization, some of the discussion points, coordination for tenants, the Speakers Bureau. We thought that was a great idea. One of the things we discussed as a possible challenge is this is everyone can come, everyone can have a voice, everyone can speak, kind of a platform right now, and moving to a more kind of organized structure may take away from that. It may be seen as more of a organized structure, and it may lose kind of the come one, come all kind of feel. So how would we work to ensure that everyone still can participate, have their voice, be heard, kind of thing. So we talked about that. We also talked about funding, as in making sure that that would be sustainable. So looking for funding, you know, in the start, there's startup funding, and you can get a lot of momentum for funding when you're wanting to start something in the beginning, but making sure that the funding is sustainable. So that's another thing we discussed.
Great.
That hasn't already been discussed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So as we move through group 6, any new thoughts to add from your group?
What about group 5?
Yeah, I was going to say group 5.
Yep, group 5.
All right, is Nate from Tacoma Rescue Mission. Will be representing group 5 in our discussion over this topic. I think we pretty much went over the same thing. Most of the groups went over because we're of like-mindedness. So I think the only real concerns that I haven't heard yet was, you know, are these positions going to be full-time, or are they going to be someone who's already in a coalition and trying to take on these roles as well? Because I think if we're going to do this, we're going to need someone who can focus on this and to make sure that it's done right. And then someone who already knows what we're trying to accomplish. So someone who's already involved would be amazing. Just so that we're not having someone trying to play catch up or trying to figure out how we work as a coalition. And then also using this to kind of streamline what we're doing. So having an order of operations of how we collaborate with each other in the coalition so that we're not stepping on each other's toes or trying to accomplish the same thing someone else is, and taking that energy and focus it on something that's not being focused on or energy is being put into. So it's definitely a good idea. It's just how it's executed is going to determine how effective and how that time is going to be used to help those that we're trying to help, and not be another hoop to jump through to get things accomplished.
Great. Thanks, Nate. And apologies for skipping over group 5. I won't miss the next group, group 6.
Okay, in group 6, appreciated the idea of having a sustainable structure, but we feel like the structure should reflect the population we serve and be flexible and adaptable to change and fluid as need be. We talked about continuing to work with Cheney Foundation, Tacoma Pierce County Chamber of Commerce as a source of income. And then Tara talked about fee for service, and Tara's going to explain exactly how that would work if we were to use something like that. Go ahead, Tara.
Hi, everybody. Tara from CCS. And so we were just talking about like a fee for service and, you know, being able to bill maybe, you know, Medicare or Medicaid, like how we do, you know, for FCS or something like that. I'm talking. And sorry. So yeah, we were just talking about fee for service and how like, if we're able to use that, then we can just kind of like keep rolling the money and then just having that would be sustainable and everything else that she said.
Great.
Introduce it.
Thanks, Tara and Verna. So group 7, additional thoughts.
That was our group. We had a pretty small but mighty group, including a person for the very first meeting. So, but similar to Mike Yoder's group, that was a representative from LIHI who was talking about the Seattle Coalition and some of the benefits of that, including building out some advocacy around new projects when you have to deal with like neighborhood councils, and you could have some like officially aligned advocacy, and you could have already neighborhood experts as well as experts around the service community that could talk officially on behalf of the coalition, which is something we haven't had before as an advantage. Also looking to like vet new partners or whatever, because we would, as a 501c3, we'd end up with a list of committed partners or signed on partner agencies, or however we would do it. There'd be somebody dedicated not just to arranging the coalition presentations, but also like spending time with the organization to some degree, understanding their values and if they align with the coalition and the vision mission, which kind of comes to my first negative. I think most people who've worked with me long enough knows that I'm probably the loudest, let's not touch the secret sauce proponent of doing anything with the coalition except for leaving it alone. Although I'm slowly adjusting on that. But part of the value has been that our structure is only one value, like to end homelessness in any way that means, which allows for people on both sides of the political spectrum to walk in and be curious about either what's happening or what their vision can align with. So we've had people on both sides of the spectrum come in. We've had religious organizations, and we had like the satanic something present. I can't remember their name, but we've had both sides. And if we start to pick a lane and we pick a person and we pick an organization, regardless, that person's values will start to bleed into the decision making of the coalition, and that'll start to change the model from everyone's welcome to participate to everyone's welcome to participate as long as they fall in this structure of beliefs and values, which may not be the worst thing, but it could happen. There's a possibility to come up with more unified orchestration of resources as well as unified recommendations when we get requests from politicians or different nonprofits or whatever about what's a good use of these resources. We'd have that answer. And again, the one hiccup could be bias, that if we start to pick our favorite organizations or pick our favorite solutions, and we would be a little less big tent, open-minded. But that's just my own fear. Maybe it won't come to fruition. That's it. Anything else, Group 7, if there's anything I missed?
You explained it very well. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just add that we would like the group to have part of their mission that they work themselves out of a job, like we actually end homelessness and not get into the structure.
Fantastic. So group 8.
Hello. I was in another small group with Maureen and Judy, and I think Richard joined us there at the end. We commented on how, like as far as an org chart goes, this is a really nice way to do the org chart where the executive and the leadership is beholden to the masses almost, and that the group has priority say over their business and everything. So that was really nice, and I think the intentionality in that was well sought out on our end, and I think I really appreciate that. We also talked about that the funding sources. It's nice to have an organization that's not necessarily government funded, that to have outside funding and a collection of different funding sources may make them a little bit more nimble and able to adapt rather than having those political priorities pushed down from above. So the response type can adapt as we see fit. We also discussed how having a structure of this sort may allow it to be more poignant and focused with the communication, and having one person to advocate and to come to the different stakeholders and stuff as the representative of the group may help the voices of the group be heard better, rather than hearing a choir of voices. We have one singular voice that's running the ideas up. And kind of with James's comments there about ensuring that the position isn't biased and isn't beholden to their favorite organizations and such. It's kind of nice to know that this position is separate from these organizations, so that right now with how we have it structured, and that we all belong to different groups and different entities and different organizations, there is some comfort in knowing that this person represents would be beholden to the homeless population and those of our community, rather than this is their side job. They work for the county, or they work for any of our organizations and nonprofits, and then this is their part-time position. That this person they purely speak for this group, and if they aren't meeting the needs of this group, they can be held accountable for that because of the way the org chart is structured. So our group kind of like that too. And I think pretty much everything else has been already covered. Let my group can speak up, I'm sure, if I missed anything. So thanks so much.
So thank you for that. So I think what we want, I want to say I appreciate all of the feedback from everyone and the thoughts of everyone on this process and proposal. I think our hope this morning was to get everyone's thoughts and to let this idea now sit and ruminate a little bit over it before we make any kind of formal proposal to move anything forward. And I do, looking at the time, see that, of course, we've spent more time on this important conversation than we had allocated in the agenda, which is fine. So I do want to be mindful of that time and move on to our next agenda item soon. But Garrett, do you have any closing thoughts you want to share?
I appreciate everybody's thoughts. A lot of them are thoughts I've been having. And so I feel like I can take all this feedback and put a version 2 out. And just to reiterate, the goal is this structure is a servant of this group at this meeting and these other groups. And I heard that loud and clear, I think, and that's what I want as well. I think I'll just wrap up in 2 minutes here. I think to how the commissions work at the city of Tacoma that I've been involved with, I'm on the Transportation Commission, I've been on another one, and the commission's appointed by the city council, and they have city staff that support their work. And the city staff are subservient to the work that the commission does. When the commission decides to write a letter, Planning Commission's a great example. Planning Commission says they want a letter written. They tell staff how to write the letter. The letter gets written by staff, it gets brought to the commission, and then the commission signs off on it, and it goes out as the commission. The staff support the work and they inform the work, but they are subservient, right? They are there to make sure that what the commission decides needs to be done gets done, and the commission remains independent. And that's the philosophy I want, behind. That's what I'm hearing from you all, is that autonomy is incredibly important to all of you. And I was trying to create a structure that kept that in mind, and I heard a whole bunch of ways that I can write that out clear. So thank you all for that energy. I'm feeling like I need to come up with kind of a second version and get any final feedback, and then figure out how to make this happen.
Awesome. So thank you again to everybody for participating in that really important conversation, and thanks, Garrett, for putting up the initial draft so that we could have that conversation. I think we'll do a quick shift of the agenda. We had 2 discussion items queued up next, but I want to be respectful of the time of Pastor Christopher. Pastor Christopher, would you like to take the floor and talk about what the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance is doing and how we can work with the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance as a coalition to support that work?
Oh, okay, thank you. So the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance is working on homelessness from several different fronts. One, intervention and prevention. Number 2, and also we trying to look at how do we manage those that that don't want to be in a structured place. But they don't want an apartment. They don't want to stay in a home. And so the survey, because of the survey that caught my attention, because it identified that that there is a population among the persons that are homeless that want to be homeless. They want to live homeless, and so that said to me, how do we manage that group and manage them in a way where they still feel valued and they're treated with dignity, and then yet held accountable for their actions. And when I saw the survey, I was just really impressed with the survey because it showed action and it gave enough information that any one of the groups that are that's in this coalition could begin implementing. And so I emailed Dr. Al and I said, hey, let's all get together and look at this document produced by MDC and look at some of the recommendations from MDC based on the survey of approximately 91 homeless persons, and let's confront the city. Let's confront the county. On helping us to service these different populations within homelessness. So we continue to hear verbiage like the eradication of homelessness, ending homelessness. But then when you look at the survey, it kind of forces me to reevaluate that, because there are persons that they just don't, they want to be homeless. So it seems like that might be a insurmountable goal to eradicate homelessness, but then what do we do with that percentage of population of homeless persons? So that's where I'm at. Some of you might have met Shubdub. He was a homeless person in the city of Tacoma for years. Some of the leaders of the Tacoma Pierce County Black Collective, they went to the city and on his behalf, and they was able to get him in an apartment. And so one day I was in the post office checking my P.O. box, and I hear this voice say, hey, Reverend Christopher, how are you doing? Very eloquent, very articulate. And I looked over there, and there was Shubdub, and he said to me that some of the leaders in the African American community got him an apartment, but he said that the Lord told him that he had to stay out on the streets with his people. So some of them that are out there now have the same conviction that whether we agree with it or not, they have the same conviction of Shut Dub is that this is where they need to be. And then and if that's the case, then we need to figure out how do we serve that population. And I think that some of the recommendation from CDC is, it's a start.
Great. Al, did you want to add anything to this conversation?
Just as Pastor Christopher was talking, I had a telephone call from my son who has brain cancer, so I didn't hear about the first half of what you said, Pastor. I think there are important opportunities for this coalition and the Ministerial Alliance to collaborate on advocating some of these things and drawing some other organizations into an advocacy group to push for the recommendations that were contained in that survey report.
Thank you, Al. Galaxy A10E, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. If you could, you have your hand raised, so I don't know if you had something to add.
Rob, that was Patricia.
Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Patricia Washington, and I just listening to Reverend Christopher, he was speaking about how he did surveys and how people were saying that I've been working with the homeless community probably for about maybe 10 or 15 years. I've been actively in the field working for them. When they had the park going on, I was there working with Mary Norman, and I too took a survey to see who, if they could go to treatment, would they go to treatment to get the help for their substance abuse? I have made my own little ministry to where I'm assessing people and trying to get them help, helping them with food stamps, sign up for Social Security thing. What I found at this time when I did my survey was there weren't a lot of people that said they want to be homeless. They said if they could be housed, they would be housed. They said that they would go to treatment if they could go to treatment. I can tell you just from being up here and knowing what's going on in the streets on the ground level is that a lot of people don't have the skills to maneuver the process. So what needs to be created, and this is just a little nugget, what needs to be created is fast track housing. People don't have the skills to navigate through the internet to find a place, to do the credit screening. And those small things are what takes the motivation out of leaving from out of their situation. I just want to put a heads up for that. That's just from experience. I've met a lot of people that have gotten the HIN program, but the HIN program's just sitting and they're homeless because they don't know how to find a place. They don't know how to get on the internet. They don't know how to find resources to help pay for that screening process. And most of the time, the different barriers that they have, their behavioral health, substance abuse, those things, they don't know where to start at. So I think that's a good nugget for the program. I don't know where that fits in where everyone else is, but I just joined today, and Miss Flanagan asked me to join so I can give the voice of the peers from the ground level.
Thank you.
Can I just speak for 1 second on that, Rob? Sure. That's what my program does at Inside Passages. We help individuals and households to navigate the system because we completely understand that the system is so complex, particularly when a homeless individual or household's sole focus is where are you going to lay your head down at night and where is your next meal going to come from? That is all consuming, right? So that is what our program does. We help individuals to navigate the system. That is all we do. So for all of you here, if you didn't know about us or you have questions, I'll drop my contact information in the chat and you can contact me and I can explain more about our program, who we are, what we do, our eligibility, all of that, but that is what we do.
Thank you, Jenny. And I know Nathan had something he wanted to add. He had put in chat, but I asked him to do so verbally.
Sure. It just sort of, it's been no secret. I mean, it shouldn't be any secret to folks that have read the literature on homeless services rendered across the country that homeless people, generally prefer self-managed living, right? So when the MDC survey came out that said that the majority of them would prefer to be in self-managed encampments, like that makes perfect sense, right? Like, I mean, just apply it to your own life, right? Like if you were suddenly thrust into homelessness and were given the option to go stay at a shelter in which kind of, you know, not for no reason, but your essential dignity was going to be mitigated, right? Like your ability to be a fully functioning, independent adult is going to be mitigated by the fact that there are rules in place. Like you can only have certain types of belongings. You can only be with certain types of people. Like you can't have kind of fulfilled regular relationships in that setting, right? Like given the option between camping outside and being my own person and having my sort of American concept of independence valued, or going to a program somewhere where I stop being able to make my own decisions, like I'm never going to want that, right? There was a great study done in the 60s that I refer to where they surveyed a bunch of homeless folks at a couple of cities, and I'll try and find it. And they had them rank the types of housing that they would prefer. And managed shelters or managed encampments were always much, much higher than any type of shelter bed or anything like that. That was really my only thing. And we also, like we at Comp go out and we do a similar thing where we try to navigate the system. Obviously our clientele is chronically homeless. So we're dealing with people that have substantial co-occurring mental health, and it's a lot harder to get them through the system, which seems to work better for folks that are sort of managed a little bit more or in a setting. So yeah, I mean, that stuff exists. That was all.
Thank you, Nathan. So I know Maureen had her hand raised first.
So I want to thank Pastor Christopher for, you know, coming and for bringing this forward, and obviously MDC and Colin for doing that survey. I think that I think it helps us do a couple of things. I think it helps us it gives us an opportunity to take seriously what people who are unsheltered are saying. And we've not heard those voices that clearly for a long time. And then I think in that opportunity, I don't think the question is, you know, should people be sheltered or not sheltered? I think it's how do we have, as this community, enough safe places that people themselves define as safe, so their essential dignity as human beings is recognized and respected. And what somebody might define as safe today might be a self-managed encampment. It might be because they don't believe they have any other options. I've heard that from people who are experiencing homelessness, that before I'll tell you that I don't have any choices, I'll tell you this street is my choice. From a man in this community who had once been on the staff at PLU, and whom I was privileged to know fairly well. So I just think that the conversation's on the table in a way it hasn't been. And it's on the table with people who haven't been part of it, i.e. the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance with us. They've clearly been part of it themselves, but now it's a different conversation, a different opportunity, like Al was saying, and I'm grateful. I mean, we've got the safe parking part. We're, you know, trying to look at some other options. And so I think the question is, how do we want to take this forward?
Thank you, Maureen. Megan, I know you had a comment before you need to leave to teach.
Yeah, I gotta teach in like 10. So no, I have a couple of comments. I'm glad this report came to light. Like it was, and I also think it gives us room to push and start analyzing encampment policies, because one of the major issues that happened on Monday is not having clarification of when sweeps can happen and what the procedure is. So with what happened with the encampment down at near 509 in the port. Displacement, especially right now as it gets to winter and cold and rain, means Sweeps, like, especially when we don't have shelter, means there's like potential deaths. Because if you think about having to move all your belongings, that means all the stuff essentially when you move potentially gets wet. And there's no place where folks can like hang up their belongings to dry out. It also causes like panic and stress on a population that already is experiencing that. And like, as Nate was saying, the like having autonomy to pick and choose and with living outside allows some folks to have that freedom. I'm also thinking about how can we support these folks this coming winter, because we're not going to have enough shelter to support folks. Just gotta be blunt, but we also don't want any more deaths this winter. I think that we really need to push more on, I think this is a window. I think it still needs more work to push things. But I gotta roll.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye.
Teresa, you also had your hand up.
I will be quick. I just want to first say to Pastor Christopher that it is wonderful to have you here, and we really welcome your energy and some kind of alliance. Anyone who's working in this work in the way that your group is, it's a great connection. So happy to have you here. And also wanted to say to Patricia that welcome, and to anyone else who is here for the first time. We don't always do a good job of welcoming first timers, but you are very welcome. We're delighted to have you here and hope to get to know you. I just want to also, people are, when they first come, are not necessarily aware of who's in the room and who's doing the similar work. So if you or your organization in some part of that work is about helping people navigate into mental health care or housing or anything else, maybe you have a warm line where people can call in, maybe you do referrals, whatever you do. If you or your organization is doing that as part of your work, will you raise your hand?
I think it's safe to say a huge percentage of us.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, because sometimes people join the group and they don't think anyone else is at the wheel with them. So just know that we are with you. We are all working on that. And I mean, most of us are working on it one way or another. So welcome to the wheel.
Thank you, Teresa. I see Colin raising his hand as well.
Yes, I just wanted to also just say thank you to Pastor Christopher for his comments, his interest in being on here. I think that I'm excited that everybody is getting to see this report and really pulling the information out of it that is. I think a lot of us know it. I think a lot of us, it's not everyone, but this is telling us a really key story. And I think I hope that we do more. I really appreciate that there's conversation going on. But what I will tell you from being involved with this for too many years is there's been conversations going on before. When I was the homeless services manager for the city, we had lots of similar conversations. And I think actions are what we really need. And so it's great to have faith-based organizations involved. The Safe Parking Network, stuff like managed outdoor camping goes hand in hand with safe parking networks. You can actually tie them together super easily. When we're talking about managed sites, we could be talking about managed sites of 20, 30, ideally less than 40, but whatever, it can be whatever it is. And I just hope, to what everyone's saying, like winter's coming, these people are out there and they're going to be out there. It doesn't matter. I've seen firsthand, we've all seen it. There could be 20 beds open at a shelter and those beds may sit empty because we cannot, if we haven't learned yet that we can't force people into a box, then shame on us, because it is what it is. And if we don't hear their voice and try to figure out, hey, this is where they're at right now, I think we would all agree. None of us want people living in tents in an outdoor setting, whether it's managed or unmanaged, but that's where people are right now. So what we can do, as it was mentioned earlier, to me, this is all about community safety, right? This is about creating a safe community and us understanding that everyone here is a part of the community. Everyone out in those tents is a part of the community. So we need to create a safe community for all. A safe community for those living outdoors is a safer community for us, right? Because they're not put into situations where they're in a survival mode or they're in some crazy vulnerable situations. So I'm excited about the conversations. Please know I'm willing to be involved in any of them. And, you know, I'm really optimistic moving forward that we can get the ball rolling on this. And what I'll tell you about the managed sites, when I set one up for 160 individuals in Olympia, we set that site up in less than a month and it was rolling. So these things can be set up really, really quick. I've done it in Tacoma. I've done it in Olympia. I've helped do it in other cities. I've helped in California design it. So these things can happen really quickly, and we need it really quickly because look outside, it's really bad. So just thank you, you know, and I'm excited, you know, for this. This group is just a powerhouse. So I'm excited to see what we can do, and the voice is really powerful.
Hey, Rob, can I just jump in real quick? Yeah. I totally agree with everyone, and I think that is this is what we need to do, and I'm excited we're having this conversation. But just one point of clarity, just to respond to Colin a little bit. There isn't 20 empty shelter beds. There's 1,000 beds and they're always full. And if we doubled the shelter beds, they would be full. So we need this on top of the shelter beds. Like, I just want to make sure those that are new don't think that there's a bunch of people with a bunch of empty beds waiting, they just are refusing to go, because all the shelters right now could take on double the clients, but we don't have double the beds. So just one point of clarity, especially for the new piece.
And especially don't have double the space due to COVID, so. So Pastor Christopher, actually, if you have some additional thoughts you want to add, and how can the coalition work with you to most effectively move forward?
So let me say that the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance want to work with the coalition, and as we do that, then we'll figure out what type of help that we think that the coalition could lend to us. I wanted to respond a little bit on James' last few statements, and I hear this all the time that the beds are full. And so earlier this year, when we had that cold front, it was freezing, COVID had hit, and so our multi-purpose building was just sitting there empty, and having a brother that froze to death because he was homeless, I felt compelled to get the trustees to allow me to open that building up for persons that to be able to come inside so that they can have a warm place. We had prepared to feed them 3 times a day. We had a big screen with they could watch movies. They'd have been free to just come there as long as they didn't, start fights and all that. It was going to be real soft, hands-on. And so the Tacoma Police Department emergency team went out and tried to get persons to come in out of that cold, real cold weather. And even though we had the capacity for about 35 or 40 people, only 2 people wanted to come out of that cold. So there was reasons like, well, I don't want to leave my stuff out here. So what's valuable to a person is valuable to a person. So you have to kind of respect that. And then some, they're saying, no, I'm good where I'm at. And so, but James, we couldn't, and we kept the building open for 7 days, round the clock. The city manager went out and even bought hot chocolate and stuff and kind of hung around, talked to the couple guys. We thought we was gonna just have a packed house, but we was really shocked that that there was so many that were still out there that just didn't want to come in, which gives verity to this survey where it says 72% want to stay outside. And so we just have to, and I think I think the start is okay. There was a young lady on earlier that that said she's on the ground running. That okay, let's identify all the persons that want to be indoors, and seem like that would be persons that we could service and get them, fast track them, you know, out of homelessness. But we certainly need to figure out how do we love this 72% and how do we service them and they know that, you know, we're servicing them out of care and not judging them, not looking down on them, you know, and we treat them as persons. So they are here. Jesus made a statement, the poor you will have with you always. And I think that that's where we're at with the homeless population. You know, eradication of homelessness sounds good, but in reality, especially based on this very recent survey, you know, that's not a reality. And so the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance want to fit in where it can, and there are so many great groups that's already a part of this coalition that we just want to fit in and try to help where we could help. And so that's where we at. So the only preconceived notions that I had coming into this morning meeting is just to support the recommendations of CDC in confronting the city council and the county council. I think that if this coalition shows up, you know, there's power in numbers. At least, you know, I think that we could get some movement and as Alan, I think that was Alan, facilitating the meeting and talking about the structure, you know, we probably could get that from the city and the county, you know, if we all showed up, you know, saying enough is enough. You know, we got enough information, we're ready to move. You guys need to move with us, and we go out and do what we need to do to help those persons that don't want to be homeless, and then service those that do.
Thank you, Pastor Christopher. So with that, I want to be mindful once again of our schedule for today's meeting. We do hope that you come back and participate, and that we can work together with you, Pastor Christopher, with the Ministerial Alliance. And it would be great to have a representative from the Ministerial Alliance on our Friday calls. And again, reach out and let us know how we can support your work too.
Oh, you Alan earlier. I'm sorry, Rob. Okay, we will do that. We will.
No problem. Great. So I'm going to call a quick audible. We have two discussion items that are relatively short. Maureen, can we shift those to after the government updates?
Certainly.
Okay. Because I know folks from the city and county and health department. Some of you are here on the call, and I wanted to make sure I created space for that. So let's start with Pierce County updates.
Good morning, Jeff Rogers here. We would like to share that our rental assistance program is moving at a fast pace. We have served 1,054 households. That rental assistance amount is just under $2.3 million that has been spent. As you may be aware, we closed our rental assistance portal earlier on this month to do some catch up because of the volume of applications we received, and to be able to do fine-tune the portal so that moving forward we're better equipped to address the need. We've brought on several more providers, and so our goal is to open the portal back up October 1, which is next Thursday. And also what I'll share is that there's some conversation going on at the county to potentially add $5 million of county CARES funds to our pot. Currently, we're right around 1.5 million. So that will put another, I'm sorry, 15 million, not 1.5, sorry. too many numbers in my head, 15 million. So that will bring our pot to about 20 million. There is also a conversation, just so you're aware, at the state level of the state potentially giving some additional funds. So we're moving right along. Our goal is to spend these funds by December because that's the deadline for these funds to be spent currently. That's the update we have today. On average per household, it's just over $2,100 of assistance on average per household that is being provided. There's been some conversation, I'll share this as well, about 3 months may not be enough. We're hearing from a lot of people they're behind more than 3 months. So there is conversation going on about the potential of doing more than 3 months. We've asked the state that question. They haven't really responded for their piece of these funds, but that is a conversation that's taking place to help people more. Because we're seeing a larger need for people needing more than 3 months of assistance. So that's our update today.
Thank you, Jeff. So do we have anybody on the line from the city of Tacoma to offer any updates?
Hey everyone, it's Matthew Jorgensen with the city of Tacoma. I don't have any updates right now, but my manager, Erica Esquedes, should be on the call a bit later. I believe she may have some updates. So hopefully she'll be able to be here soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. Manu, any updates from the health department?
Yes, just have a quick little report out. So adult flu clinic planning is still in motion, and I've just been working on collecting information and working with the shelter providers who responded to the survey that I created and sent out requesting an adult immunization clinic at their facilities. And after this call, be meeting with the branch, the immunizations branch we have set up under ICS structure to discuss lessons learned from. We just had our first flu immunization clinic, drive-through clinic at school. So obviously different settings than the shelters, but we're just trying to gather as much kind of lessons learned to maximize reach, kind of talk through logistical challenges, and just really try to enhance the process overall so that when we do the clinics at the shelters and other facilities in the community, we'll be, as smooth sailing as possible. I don't know if Ivan's on the call, but shout out to Ivan who helped me to, procure some more masks for these adult clinics at the shelters. My goal and vision is to, have some sort of care package for folks with hand sanitizer, some sanitation stuff, and masks for folks to distribute at these shelters. But also, I know I keep saying community spaces. The goal right now is still to expand from just shelters to also do food banks, community centers where unsheltered folks can go to, or if it doesn't work out with shelters just for logistical reasons, that folks can still send guests to these community centers or food banks. Finally, I'm just working on collecting some questions from the coalition, from community members on to create more guidance around flu. So thank you to those who've submitted some questions. I'll kind of engage in the chat box until I have to hop off for that planning meeting. But yeah, I'm just trying to get, some sort of one-pager, just make sure that communications kind of published or developed by the health department is responsive to the unique needs of the shelter providers and the shelters. So as we head into flu season. Other than that, yeah, thanks to everyone who, again, has been so awesome and cooperative with the planning for immunizations.
Thanks, Manu. So do we have anybody from Pierce County Emergency Management that has anything to share this morning? Okay. So with that in mind, why don't we shift to the safe parking update? I don't know if Colin or Jan have anything to share this week.
Hello. Yes, I am here. I can give a brief update really quickly on the safe parking stuff. The last thing I just want to say real quick, I just want to get this out. After hearing James and Pastor Christopher, I think James's point of our shelters are always at max capacity. I'm doing work at Bethlehem. It's pretty rare even here at this shelter that we have any capacity. But I think that's what's really concerning is that even when our shelters are at capacity. There's still, if 72% want to stay outside, there's still people that want to be inside that can't get inside, right? So I think it's not one or the other. And I think that's what's so important about all of these things, whether it's safe parking, as we're talking about now, or managed outdoor settings, or creative ways to try to temporarily increase our indoor shelter. It's not one or the other. And I think sometimes, especially with funding competition the way it is, that's the challenge. Is it's everything. We actually need all of these interventions, and we actually need to figure out how to scale them and be flexible with that. So I just wanted to make that point. Anyways, safe parking wise, things are going good. We have about 4 sites that we're kind of moving along with that are very interested. A couple in East Pierce County. We got 1 in Puyallup. We got some conversations going on in Tacoma. I'm waiting to hear back. I have 1 more call to make today. I will be honest, I'm hoping that we hear some more from some of the Tacoma churches or some Tacoma partners, because I really want to get a site in Tacoma off the ground. I really want to get some other sites off the ground also. We do, I should say, the group. So more to come. We have a meeting this coming Monday. Things are going well, though. I'm going to follow up. My hope is to follow up with the county, with John Barbie, my partner from the county that I'm working with, and then also Erica Zueta from the city, with some specific questions around the ordinance and just trying to see if there's any flexibility if it's on faith-based property. Example would be in the Pierce County ordinance, it says that a site cannot be within 1 square mile of a school. And when you start looking at a map, there's a lot of schools, right? So that gets challenging. And one of the populations that we really want to serve, and there's really been a lot of interest in serving and need, is McKinney-Vento students living out of their vehicles, right? To ideally stabilize them really quickly and as quick as possible, get them into the house. But I guess it seems kind of silly if we have a site that's near a school and we're serving school-age children, but we're still not able to do that. So that's a bigger conversation that I have moving forward. But I would just say, once again, as I did last week, if you know of any churches, if you know of any potential partners that want to hear more, just hear more about it. We have some great FAQs. We have some great documentation I'm more than willing to share. I'm super willing to talk to whoever. I know that other people on our team are also. And just, I think once there's clarity on the massive amount of wraparound that's going to be involved with this program from the community, from the coalition, I think that's going to ease a lot of people's concerns. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, we don't have anything like, all right, we're opening up a site here yet. But what I'd say is we're getting close, and we're going to continue to work on it. And as I said, hopefully reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll put my number in the chat. So yeah, Janet, I don't know if you or Teresa or Maureen or anyone else, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it.
All right, thanks, Jen and Colin. So let's shift back to our earlier items we had on the agenda, and I'll hand things off to Maureen first to talk about the proposal that we support the Chamber of Commerce request, and I'll share a document on screen about that as Maureen speaks. And then we'll move on to the discussion about the new Thames site that's been proposed at 6th Avenue and Orchard. So Maureen?
Okay, do you want to hold the screen share just 1 sec, and I'll cue you in. I want to just run through, just name 5 things under advocacy, and I'll follow them up online, but just so you know. One is on the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation request that Jan and I have been invited to meet with representative of the foundation Monday afternoon. The second is that I have asked the city and county and the tribe for their encampment policy, especially if they have a COVID related, which we're calling no sweeps. It's clear after last weekend that we need a way to be better organized, better responsive, the we being everybody. The third is some sort of follow-up with the clean air shelters. And I think those fit into this all fits into our winter plan request. The fourth is sort of next week, well, probably not next week, but over the next couple of weeks, figuring out what you folks want to do about taking the unsheltered recommendations forward. The fifth is that the centers for, now these are folks who are not yet sheltered, folks who are at risk, folks who are not yet homeless, people who are housed but at risk, who fall under the CDC federal eviction moratorium. That eviction moratorium requires that they complete a declaration. And that's a huge issue. Our state eviction moratorium ends October 15th. I will today forward to you an action item from the Low Income Housing Alliance asking the governor to extend that until March. The question is not how are people going to make up the rent. The question on the table is how do we keep them where they are housed while we figure out how to make up the rent. And then the last thing is actually a piece of good news in that the Department of Treasury, some of you may already know this, changed its accounting guidance so that these relief funds that are underlying the bulk of our rental assistance, now the expenses have to be incurred by the end of the year. Prior to this, that money had to loop around and actually all be reimbursed at every single level. So again, this buys time and our ability to get this money out in rental assistance, and in doing so to keep people housed. So, okay, so now back to the items that are on the agenda. The first one is that we would like a formal vote from the coalition today about supporting the cities, joining with the Tacoma Pierce County Chamber of Commerce and supporting the city's change to the residential infill pilot program. And now you're going to say, how is this going to keep somebody housed? This is part of what makes it so difficult to have enough housing so that there are actually places for the people that you're trying to get housed to move into, is that we've got to have more housing at every single level. And so we have a partnership with the chamber around this, and I'm going to ask Garrett and Al to pick up the conversation.
I don't know that Garrett's still with us, but in the meeting.
Then Al.
I was just busy typing a note to Colin. The Chamber of Commerce, as we've reported several times, is establishing a committee on housing and homelessness, and has asked that we provide some support to the effort to adopt this residential infill pilot program that the City Planning Department is proposing. It looks to us as a good thing to support. Anything that will increase the availability of housing at any of the median and lower income price levels is a good thing that we need a lot more of in this city. So the request is, and I don't know how we're going to do this today, that we endorse the pilot proposal for the residential infill pilot. I don't know how you want to proceed with that, Maureen.
So I've actually set up a poll that we can do that to get people's input, but I thought that before we move to a vote, do folks have particular questions? I do want to stop the share screen as soon as we're ready to do so. So please let me know. I see Jan's asking for a definition of residential infill.
It's basically a zoning change, Jan, and in order to make a better use of the available land. Land's one thing we can't create more of, and it increases density. And this is has been a very gentle process. There were 3 projects On the initial pilot, there will be 15. On the revision or the extension and the changes that is coming before the public first and then to the city. And so it's just, we're inching our way to using our land as well as we can.
Remember that the city had a pilot project on accessory dwelling units in the North End a year or so ago. And that was sort of a residential infill thing. I don't know how it went. But the basic idea is to make better use of existing land on lots that maybe sort of quote oversized and could have more housing built on them, and to change zoning to begin to allow things like multifamily, small multifamily projects and multifamily projects throughout the city, not just in the low income areas, but throughout the city.
And some of you may not be aware the city has adopted the Affordable Housing Action Strategy with very specific goals about increasing the amount of housing, making sure housing is available at every income level all across the city, and to use a race and equity lens on that. And this proposal is consistent with that Affordable Housing Action Strategy. I know it's crazy. We're talking about people living in tents for most of the meeting, and now we're talking about, can we as the coalition formally support this small change in our zoning to try and increase the amount of housing? And I just think we have to do this.
So you know, this is essentially the first effort at changing zoning laws to comply with the Affordable Housing Action Strategy. And I think it's a good thing. Obviously it's not going to address the things that we've been talking about so much this morning in a very effective way, but there is a need for more housing that people can afford and can avoid ending up losing their housing in the long run. So I would encourage us to support this. It seems like a sensible, positive thing to do.
Teresa, you have your hand raised.
Because this is a small change, I think it's important to support change that is in the right direction, but I'm always seeking, there's no reason that the city planners cannot make a policy that gives preferential treatment to low income housing. And I'm sick of the people who promote the infill are the reason it's getting promoted by people who have wealth is because the people who are going to make money off it are going to people who develop and rent those places to higher income people. So I just want to say, as a coalition, we should put some suggestion in there that as these rules get slackened, that priority be given maybe for several years to people who are committed to offering their new infill spaces at a low income rate.
Thank you, Teresa. So any other comments before we move to a poll to see whether the coalition as a body supports this? All right, so I'm not seeing any, so let's move to our first poll of the afternoon, and I will launch this and give it a few seconds for people to respond. All right, and I see about half of us have participated. If we can get a few more, make sure we understand where the coalition leans in this, then we can move on to our next item. Thanks a lot, everybody. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Just, I think everyone will be able to see the results, but where we landed is 96% of those who voted, 24 people out of the 41 in the room said they're in favor of this. There was one vote against it. So thank you. I think that provides some good direction. Any follow on, Maureen?
The other thing I just wanted to bring up, and we can pick this up later, is that the chamber has a committee. They've set up a housing and workforce committee. In the past, Teresa has led a committee for this coalition on alternative housing. One of the things that Al and Garrett and I have been serving sort of as the informal housing committee for the purpose of the relationship with the chamber. My suggestion is we need a real housing committee that will take on the whole range of housing issues. How we do that, I'm not sure, and we don't have time today, but if you want to indicate in the chat, or if you want to email me that you're interested in this, so we can put that on our plate as well. So that's, thank you. Okay, I know there's a fair amount of,
before we move into the next item, I see that Erica has joined us.
Okay.
And I think that might be a good opportunity for her to offer city updates before we move on to that next item. So Erica, do you have anything to share with us from the city of Tacoma?
I do, and I'm sorry for my tardiness. I'm going to be late for a while because my son has remote learning from about 9 to 10:30 every day. So I'm one of the parents that's trying to manage that, and he's 4, so it's it's not something I can step away from. But thank you for giving me time. I did want to make an announcement. So after we set up the Air Quality Relief Center, I was working with emergency management on the possibility of setting up a COAD. And they said they were working on putting together a meeting. So I wanted to reach out and see if any of the prospective providers that participate in this group would be willing to join the COAD so we can kind of join our efforts in continued emergency response planning. And if you are interested and your agency would like to be a part of it, please just send me an email so I can get a full list and get that to her. And then we did get a flyer for the town hall for the micro shelter site off of 6th and Orchard. So I'm going to be sending that out to the coalition list so everyone has that. I think I have it for October 7th. It's in the evening. And I'm reading the chat right now, and so that's why I'm kind of stuttering a little bit. A COAD is communities organizing, I think it's to address disaster. So usually it's a group of nonprofits, faith-based organizations, other agencies that kind of meet together and see what capacity they have, and they formulate a full strategic plan on how they're going to work together when some kind of emergency hits, and what resources they can provide, and kind of have a streamlined system around that.
Thank you.
So I'll get that sent out right now. I don't know why I just had it up, but I'll try to put it in the chat so you guys can have a copy of that invite for the town hall right now.
One important follow-up, Erica, is this the city's emergency management office?
That's correct. Thank you for that
this is not the county's.
Yeah,
this
it's
is
the city of Tacoma.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Folks, this is important. All right. So take Erica up on this. Those of you who are working in the city. This is the first time I've heard this opportunity, this invitation offered.
Great. And I know Josh Castle posted in the chat about the virtual community meeting coming up on regarding the 6th and Orchard proposed shelter site for the tiny house village, which is actually a great segue to Maureen's next topic.
And it's the tiny house village on 6th and Orchard. And I, thanks to the LIHI people who have been with us today, and I think have a commitment to continuing. So if you listened to the city's first virtual community forum Tuesday after, it was at 6 o'clock after the council meeting, or if you read through the public comments that were submitted in writing, you know that there is a fair amount of pushback from residents in the 6th and Orchard area about this proposed Thames, another tiny house village that would be operated by LIHI. And so I sent out Michael Mira's letter to the community, to the council and the community, in which he gives Tacoma Housing Authority's experience with using their land, and also he adds in a neighbor's comments from the 60th and McKinley. I, in error, said that Michael had stated THA support. He does not state that explicitly in this letter. He merely says, here's our experience. The Affordable Housing Consortium did take this up and will speak in support of the project during the public hearing. And what I asked LIHI to do was basically introduce themselves. Everybody may not know the folks who are working in town, to answer any questions you might have. And I really would like the coalition to come out in support of this village. Again, I know it's not a perfect solution, but it's one solution on the table that is fairly far along. That's 40 more beds for 40 more people. And so anyway, so let's turn it over to LIHI, and I'll just let you folks go forward.
How's everybody doing today? My name is John Brown. I work with LIHI. We also have Rebecca Finks that works with LIHI, and also Josh Castle. So we appreciate the time for letting you guys let us speak. So we're trying to do we'll be doing a partnership with the city of Tacoma and also the First Christian Church on 6th and Orchard. We're planning to have 40 houses, and we also plan on doing a lot of community engagement with that. And we'll have the 2 case managers there, and it will be operating the same way that our Tim's One has off of 623 on the east side of Tacoma. And I will pass it over to Josh Castle to talk a little bit about the engagement that we plan on doing with the city of Tacoma.
Thank you, John. That's a good opening about the village, the proposed site. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for giving us the chance to speak today. I know we have just a brief amount of time, and we are forming a community advisory committee that we have for all the other village sites that LIHI operates in 3 counties now. And these are neighborhood stakeholders. These are close by neighbors, businesses, providers, community leaders in the neighborhood. That all have a stake in the village, both in the success of the residents within the village and in it being a benefit to the community, right outside the village. So if people are interested, are close to the 6th and Orchard site, or are a provider in the area, or know people that are close to the site or provider in the area, or business or whatnot, or a faith leader, please let us know, and because we are sending out that application for people to fill out. It's a PDF, electronic fill out application. We're not doing any physical forms these days. And in addition to that, if for those who are interested in attending the community meeting, please do. We have that coming up. That's going to be a virtual Zoom meeting as well on October 7th at 6 p.m. So Erica mentioned that the notice will be going out on that. I know that the city typically with LIHI would knock on doors, but we're not doing that to be respectful of social distancing. So there's a postcard that went out that everyone should have received. That's in a pretty wide area around the proposed site. I see a couple of questions. The site is proposed to be open. We're forecasting it for early to mid December, and work will start on it. The city of Tacoma is going to start work on it in sometime in, I believe, in October, and then LIHI is going to start some work on it in November. And anybody who's interested in volunteering for it, donating anything to the effort of supporting us somehow, please let us know. I'm the community engagement director with LIHI, so you can reach out to me anytime, and I will put my contact information in the chat so you guys have that. I'll put my cell phone and email in there. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else you guys have any questions?
Not a question.
And then, yeah, Al, go ahead.
Not a question. I contacted Michael and asked if he'd sent that letter to the church, and he had not, because he didn't have a contact information. So I sent it to the church, and I live just north of the Wilson High School track, so I'm not in the immediate neighborhood, but if I can do anything useful, I'll try to help.
Thank you. That's great.
Colin.
Hey, how's it going, Josh? It's exciting to see you guys here for sure, especially John. I'm glad John's still a part of this. I was just curious, for this site, the second site, are you guys going to serve just individuals, couples, or are you expanding to families? And then how many tiny houses are you going to have?
So that is has not been totally determined yet, but yeah, we're in discussions around that. It's definitely going to be individuals and couples and people with pets. So in all of our villages, we provide that service, because as you guys know, a lot of the shelters out there, they don't allow that. They don't allow couples and pets and things like that. So it kind of eliminates those barriers. I'm sorry, Colin, what's your second question? It's still the morning for me and I'm still having my coffee.
I just asked if you knew how many tiny houses you guys were going to have, if there was a set amount yet, or not.
So they're looking, but oh, sorry, Josh, they're looking between 40 and 44 is what we're aiming for.
Yeah, and just to kind of like give you guys a quick highlight on how the program works. So the Tiny House Village program is not a permanent solution. That's not what the program is intended to be. It's intended to help people out and help them move on to a better situation. So the idea is to help people who just need that extra special stepping stone to get from homelessness to housing. So basically, when people come into the village, they sign a code of conduct. They agree to certain standards of behavior and to work with a case manager to get into housing, employment, like to access employment, access healthcare. In some cases, many people they're already employed, and actually the tiny house village is what keeps them employed because they're able to get some stability. And then accessing healthcare and education if they want to seek an education. And all sorts of other services, treatment, things like that. So the idea is to help people get that, have that, that stepping stone from homelessness to housing. We've had a very successful rate of exits into permanent housing from all the village sites. They're a lot of times they're far more successful than basic shelter, and more successful than enhanced shelter at many of our village sites. So we had, and we have, so this would be the 12th, the 13th site. And yeah, we have one that we operate right now at 60th and McKinley that used to be at 8th and MLK. And that was about 22, 23 houses. And then the new site has 50 houses serving about 60 to 65 people. And then we have the CAC has met a couple times for the new site already. And already they've moved several people into permanent housing from that site. So we have really, really amazing case managers that work hard and are navigating the huge affordable housing crisis of just not enough affordable housing, but helping people on that path to getting everything that they need to move into housing, and then helping them with that. So that's what the program is about. It's meant to be a benefit to the community. It's meant to be something that serves those who are locally homeless that are already in the community, that are already, they're not coming to the community, they're already there. And it's to help people get onto a good path and out of, unhealthy behaviors and those kind of things. So.
Thank you, Josh. So Maureen, I propose we move to a quick vote since we're at the end of our time for today's meeting. Any issue with doing so?
No, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So I will launch this poll. Just so everyone knows, we have 37 folks left in the meeting today. Please, if you have a moment, let us know if you believe the coalition should support establishing this proposed shelter at 6th Avenue Orchard. All right. So we've had 25 people. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in the interest of our time. And you'll see the results. We had 26 yeses and no nos. So
hey, all right. Thanks, everybody.
We like that.
Thank you.
Thanks, the LIHI folks, for coming. We look for you every week, hopefully one of you. I know it's a huge commitment. The last thing I want to say is I just went through about 8 advocacy items in the last 15 minutes that I've been leading. Think about that when you think about the sustainability of the coalition. And those were only local things. I mean, we barely talked about anything at the state level or at the federal level. Nothing at the federal level, really, except the accounting change. So just think about that. And as always, thank you for letting me do this for you.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for your time and energy this morning. This wraps up our regular part of the meeting. Just as we've been doing for the last month or so, we will have a small group of us hang out to plan for next week's meeting. So feel free to hang on the line if you'd like to do that, and or be part of that process. And have a great Friday, everybody.
Thank you.